Hey, it's me, Michael David Cobb Bowen. I'm going to do something today that I haven't done in a while, which is talk about books. The books that made me. This one, this one's right up there, right near the top. If you wonder where the hell I've been, that is the start. I read this book when it first came out in 1982, somewhere around there. And I get this one also kind of confused with metamagical themas. But at the same time, I was reading Turing's Man and The Soul of a New Machine. And those four books, and like a lot of people, I pretended that I understood Gödel, Escher, Bach, which I didn't. And you could tell because I'd say Gödel or Gödel, Escher, Bach. So I didn't know what I was talking about. But that there's not many people that understood what that book is all about. But this one, The Mind's Eye, is really, I mean, it's one of the reasons that I'm philosophical. And it makes sense to me to put that in context of why I talk about identity and why it's important to me as a writer to think about how people are thinking about things and what it means to be a thinking person. And it's been a long time since these ideas first soaked into my head that I've really reviewed and thought about it. And I'm probably gonna reread the book. It's 450 pages, something. Where here we were thinking about the very practical ideas about what does it mean if a machine would think, and how do we think, and our computing metaphors and frameworks an accurate way to think about thinking. Where does consciousness come into this? Where is the I? How does a mind work? And I think in reviewing it, one of the things that strikes me now is how much of this came from people who are not generally involved in what we think about when we talk about AI today. So that's Daniel Dennett, Douglas Hofstadter, um, Borges. Um, so when I go back and I think about the book, of course I'm using OpenAI to help me remember, and I just had it write a 2,000 word review, focusing on the chapters that I remember specifically, and The Circular Ruins by Jorge Luis Borges. Um, and I just finished another book by him about a year and a half ago. It wasn't about him. It was about Borges, but not by him. And but I'll get to that later. So this is the story about a man who dreams up another man, and he's trying to imagine what I remember is that his son died and he's trying to recreate his son, and he dreams the son, and when he goes to sleep he becomes the son, and which his real life, his waking life, has so little meaning without the presence of his actual son who is dead, that he wants to become the son that he makes in his dream life. So uh, it's really cool to get into that kind of meta, and think about what that means in terms of how we receive information from external to ourselves, and we think that we are ourselves. Um, I think you could see that in what a man desires and what a man collects or what a man fears. These may be things that are influenced by society, but how often does your own imagination suffice to make you the whole person that you want to be? Are you dreaming yourself into reality? And maybe people are. Well, I could say this. When I decided to write my first novel, which I never finished, Jordan Crossing, I immediately went to kind of late 70s, early 80s filmmaking. So it was a book about people in a neighborhood in Los Angeles. And the opening scene, I'm thinking visually of a helicopter flying over the affluent neighborhoods of Malibu and Pacific Palisades. And then they get into a more gritty part of Los Angeles. And I was angry at myself because I said, I can't even think about a book as a book. Rather, I'm imagining a movie. So how do you actually imagine yourself as a human being without external stimulation or the external being your muse, your inspiration? Prelude Ant Fugue by Hofstadter is really interesting. He writes it as a music, as a dialogue between three characters, and it was very cool. I just like the idea that there might be multiple selves in the self, and there are partial selves that you give attention to. And so you may have multiple characters inside of yourself, and you try to cohere yourself into a socially presentable self, whereas you may have multiple selves or multiple desires or multiple needs or multiple wants, multiple joys, multiple fears. These your limits, or where you feel brave, where you feel like you can accomplish anything, or where you feel like you'll never accomplish something, and these are all factors in yourself. We talk about the good wolf and the bad wolf as a simple duality in that, but there are multiple selves in yourself. And the strange thing about me looking at it now, at my age, mid 60s, is that I have been selves and I've forgotten those selves, or I don't know what motivated those selves to do what they did when they did them, or society has changed so much. And when I think about society changing a lot, it brings me back to this book when I think about the quality of the individuals who are participating in this collection. Alan Wheelis, Hofstadter, Dennett, Smulyan, Fritz Lieber. Smulyan, I love doing logic puzzles with Raymond Smulyan. A lot of stuff that I did in college I set up a little scholarship called The Evil Dean, and it was a logic puzzle that I made up for students, and it was just the smallest prize that I could imagine that a student would go for. It was like $25 or something like that, and I don't know whatever happened after that, but Is God a Taoist? Was one of the chapters in the book, and certainly it was something that made me consider the Tao, which I ultimately did study the Tao. Um, but I love his logic play. I love his multi-level. There's things that come out on the internet these days, and they're stupid puzzles, and it's really strange to see the orientation, which is like it says 95% of people are not going to get this. They're never going to figure this out, and it's actually a trick question. And I think somebody has just recently written something about spoony culture. And the spooning is, oh, I'm just so horrible. Would you please come and hug me? And then there's this sort of giving that reinforces that your neediness. And this is a rising part, a segment of our culture, our population, who are feeling so isolated that they need a hug all the time. And when you give them the hug, they still need it more. And it's a completely different attitude in terms of how you would use a puzzle to challenge somebody's mind. Where in this, they'll get to some direct, clear language that you can understand. Whereas the other part is a trick question that has multiple answers because you can interpret it wrong because they're not being clear in the first place. And Smullian is giving you very clear things. It's like today's questions are 3 equations and 5 unknowns. And you're like, well, how could you possibly solve that? Well, see how horrible it is to be a thinking person? It just feels bad, doesn't it? Whereas Smullian would know. If you have 5 unknowns, you need 5 equations. And he gives them to you. So that is the nature of challenging ourselves. Dennett, epistemological nightmare. That's funny because there was a book that I read before I came to college. It was Woody Allen's Without Feathers. I think it was Without Feathers. And he had the same thing, an epistemological nightmare, where you take the extension of the who's on first joke, and you play with words, and you do this circular reasoning, and you do all this kind of vertiginous thinking that confuses you, and you don't know who you are, and you have to kind of take that approach that James Baldwin talked about, is you have to force people to deal with who you actually are rather than what they believe you to be. But you have to have some continuity. I don't know. There's another one, Alan Wheelis' Spirit. And I have to end on this because this was the most profound idea that I got from this book, was in the essay of Alan Wheelis, who says that we're vessels of spirit. We're not. Things flow through us. Ideas flow through us. Our own emotions that we don't understand where they come from, they flow through us. And we're in a constantly changing state. And one of the things we try to do is to cohere into something explicable. And sometimes we don't know who we are until we bounce ourselves off of other people. And sometimes we know exactly who we are because we question ourselves so often and so frequently and so sternly. Most of the time we're in a mix, and we don't exactly know who we are. And who we are is kind of an emergent property within us. And depending on where we go and who we're interacting with, what we know, what we assume, what we guess, what we think other people knows, we are something in the moment that we can't be by ourselves. And even as I'm talking into this machine and recording what kind of ideas I was entertaining literally almost 50 years ago. No, it couldn't have been that long ago. No, it wasn't 50 years ago. It's 35 years ago, something like that. It's deep. It's cyclical. It's ever refreshing. The one thing that I can recall most recently thinking about this was why consciousness or our emergent selves, we don't crash. And when you first get into computer science, you learn about the halting problem, and you want a program that doesn't get into an infinite loop. And yet now we do have game loops with a few exits for certain conditions. And I think we're constantly evaluating ourselves, and it's in our hardware. We're not binary. We're something else. And I think we have combined 2 or 3 processes to make the connections between our neurons. Probably electrical, probably chemical, probably physical. And this gives us the ability to reinforce or de-emphasize. This is just crazy theory. But by using those multiple processes, I haven't finished reading Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, so that may have something to do with what I would know here. But I didn't realize that this would be so hard to approach as just an ordinary person in society, that this would be so arcane, so unknown to so many people, and that we would change what we expect society to do in terms of our everyday lives. When we talk about AI, in the very concrete material way that we talk about it, like, is OpenAI going to go public, and is it actually a public corporation or is not, and is it actually going to destroy us or is it not? And we're not dealing with the philosophical questions of self, of thinking machines, of how we are thinking machines, and what our existence means to ourselves. We just kind of outsource this part, which is computable, and maybe what we are is not computable. We can abstract it, and we can say this is what it is to be a self. And by the way, M.R. Carey has written about selves and thinking machines and citizens in his 2 novels that are really great about the Pandominion series, I guess it is. So these things continue to be interesting to me. These things continue to perplex and amuse and inspire me. And I'm shifting at this point in my life to doing more programming, to really write for the machine, which is something I never believed I would do. I always thought that I would be writing for people through the machine. But now I'm going to be writing for myself, just for the skill of improving my programming skills. And that's going to put me in an arcane world, even more arcane than I'm in, combining these disciplines into who knows what. So, serious book. Loved it. Gonna read. Shut up. I'm not talking to you. Stupid smartphone.